Hi, stay right there. Today I am with executive coach, facilitator, speaker, and she is a global HR leader. Please help me welcome Melanie Vargas.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Melanie.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who were you surrounded with that inspired you to do what you do today?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I feel like it's actually no mistake that I named my newest company Radical Ignition, because I've always just been fascinated with unleashing human potential, and really just creating pathways for people to be um, really successful in their careers. The people around me, my family and my friends and people that I grew up with, have always kind of given me feedback that I'm a people igniter, and that was really sort of some of the basis for why I do what I do and how I sort of fell into this career. Just from the very beginning, as growing up, I've just always been sort of had that in my DNA to do this for a living, and have just been passionate about working with people and through people and motivating people. It's just been part of kind of who I am as a person. And the other piece is that I've found myself really drawn to very entrepreneurial companies and organizations, and then really sort of helping them to build their organizational cultures with intention, and have done that for almost 30 years. And I've had this really amazing opportunity to work across many different types of organizations. In the last 15 years, I've been consulting. And so I've had this opportunity to work across hundreds of different types of organizations. And then as I've gotten older, I've had the opportunity, sort of later in life, to launch, this executive coaching business. So now I'm in my 50s, and I had a chance to launch a company later in life, which is, doing the work that I absolutely love, which has been great.
What are top three mistakes to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the number one mistake for me, that I always tell people, is not to let fear get in the way of whatever it is that you're doing in your life. I think it can be a big roadblock to people's success in their life, and it can sort of trap you. And in many ways, it holds people back from making choices in their lives, and sort of stops them from doing things that they would be doing otherwise. And it's probably one of my most favorite coaching questions. And I'll say to people, what would you be doing in this situation if fear were not in the way? And it helps kind of open up possibilities. What are the top three? It's like probably covers 1, 2, and 3, because if I think back to my life, even, early on in my career, where fear were in the way, oftentimes it is fear, and is it fear? Is it pride? Is it ego? Those kinds of things where they're interwoven, and where are they getting in the way? The other thing is, inner critic. That would be another sort of mistake. And the times where I've let that inner voice or my inner critic get in the way of my decision making. So that's something that, as a coach and as a person, as a woman, as a female leader, I don't do that anymore. I don't let that sort of inner critic voice and those stories in my head that tell me that, if it's imposter syndrome or some type of, old story that's getting in my way, maybe that I'm not good enough, or that there's not going to be enough. Whatever that story is, I've learned to recognize it really early on and sort of shut it down before it gets in the way of me being successful. And clearly, I was able to launch a company in the middle of a pandemic. And so, even when those little stories start to pop up, whether it's fear or critic or whatever, imposter syndrome or whatever it is, really learning to sort of squash it right when it's coming up. So those are some of my top mistakes that I try to avoid. It's probably more than three.
Yeah, it's very amazing. You mentioned those are even I've been interacting with people, and those are the things. It's even we become successful. It keep coming. So I appreciate you being open up and vulnerable to you admit it's not a one time thing. It's keep coming. It's repeat. It can come again too. So let's move to my next question. What is your greatest failures or mistakes? And how did you recover from it?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I think it segues nicely from our last question. Um, and I also think that that failures are great opportunities for learning. Um, and so when you think about those biggest mistakes or failures that you've had in your life, you can look back on those and think about, when you've had those great mistakes, there's also been some big gift that you got on the other side of it. So when I look back on those sort of failures, I actually don't think about them as failures. I see them as like gifts. They were great gifts to me. Um, and so, I think of I think of these as like pivotal turning points. Um, and there's been a few that come to mind for me. So probably the one that stands out the most for me were when I left my prior career. I did it pretty quickly to launch my new company. I made the decision, I would say, at a crisis point in my life. My dad had just passed away. There was a lot of really sort of crazy things going on in my life at the time. And I would say I made the decision pretty fast, which is one of the things that I do. I do things pretty fast and hard. And I regret that decision. Now, a couple of years later or several years later, looking back, there's a lot of things that I would do different. And that's the beauty of failure and mistakes, is that you can learn from it and you can turn those challenges into gifts and opportunities. Because I've learned a lot of things from that mistake. Because I hurt some people when I made that choice. And looking back, there's a lot of things that I would have done differently now, making that change. So, again, it's a big challenge that I can look back at and see it as a gift, because I'm a different person now, and I've learned a lot.
What are your top three success secrets that others can follow?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, you know, Surround yourself with people. Community is always number one. You can't do it alone. Um, and I sometimes I think I'm on my own island, so even I struggle with number one, because I'm a I'm a pretty motivated individual to, I've worked with a lot of high achievers, and in my mind, I'm always pushing to be successful. But the truth is, you really can't do anything by yourself. So the community and collaboration from others is how you're going to be successful. So that would be number one. Number two would be self-care. And remembering that if you don't, work is not everything, and you got to have balance in your life. And that is something I learned later in life, at the cost of a lot to get to that point. That my family and my kids and my relationships are more important to me than how much money I have in the bank and how much work I have and those kinds of things. And so, and actually, when I remember that, I actually am more productive and successful because I'm happier. So I'm actually more successful. So it's interesting how that all works out. And I guess number three kind of works alongside with some of the questions that we worked on earlier. And that would be not letting fear get in the way. Because if I look back at any time where I was afraid of the future or afraid of the past, what's going to happen out there? I mean, you can think about what's happening in the world right now. If we're letting the pandemic or uncertainty of the future get in the way of making our decisions or launching a new business or launching a new product line or whatever it is, we can't do that. We got to make decisions, the most impactful decisions that we should be making, regardless of what's happening. So I think not letting fear and uncertainty get in the way.
Thank you, Melanie. We are entering into a speed round. That means quick questions and short answers. Are you ready for it?
I am.
What is the most impactful business book you have read, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I would say definitely Brene Brown's Dare to Lead as a coach. That would be my number one. And probably the number one thing I learned from it that I use with all my work with clients is her definition of what it is to be a leader.
What do you want to be remembered for?
I love that question. Probably two things are that stand out for me on that question, and that would be how I've made a difference in people's lives, and then also, this is really three things: how I've made a difference in people's lives, how I am as a wife, and how I am as a mom.
How do you overcome a challenge life throws at you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of adversity in my life, both personally and professionally. And so I've learned a lot about resilience, and I do a lot of work. Resilience is a muscle that you always have to build. And so I would consider myself, always learning and building my resilience muscle. And so I have sort of a resilience toolkit that I am always building. And that is something that helps me get through challenges in life.
Once you have a revenue generating idea, how do you convince your significant other?
It's a great question. He is my number one coach. And he's always on board with those ideas. Thankfully, he's always coming along the way. So that's an easy sell because he's a big champion of everything that I do.
What are you grateful for today?
I would say today I'm grateful for my relationships. the people I love, and being able to show up and do the work that I'm passionate about and love every day.
Who is your living mentor, and what is the impact they have on you?
Yeah, in thinking about that question, it's got to be my significant other, my husband, who I mentioned earlier, who he is my coach. He's my first coach. He's the first person to kind of challenge me in what I'm doing. He's also the first person to champion whatever it is that I'm doing and to help me see the possibility in what I'm doing. He also helps soften out the rough edges of who I am. So he's definitely my number one mentor.
Why is being impactful important to you?
Yeah, I love that question. I think, because I really feel like I want to make a difference, whether it's in people's lives or in the organizations that I'm working in. I just feel really, I feel like it's really important. And one of the reasons I love working in early stage companies, because you really feel the difference that you make in those organizations from the ground floor.
How do you start your day?
Yeah, so there's the way that intentionally I start my day, which when I'm very intentional about it, it's a quiet time where I am mindful and I have a meditation practice, and I spend 30 minutes to an hour with very quiet time. And when I am very intentional with that practice, I have a very productive, impactful day. If I jump out of bed and I'm in my email immediately, it's not so much. So something to really think about.
Who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is someone who is willing and committed to grow, someone who might recognize that they have a gap in their leadership or their teams, might have a blind spot that they need to figure out and diagnose what it is. We all have those little blind spots in us, and I'm really interested in working with leaders that really want to grow and develop in their leadership, no matter how far along they are in their growth.
What is the advice you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, I would say don't sweat the small stuff. And then also, maybe pause, take a deep breath before you jump into action. And then also not letting your achievements define you. That would be, the other kind of key advice, that the achievements aren't everything.
How can we support you?
Yeah, I think just the opportunity to talk about radical ignition and promote the company, and having me on the show today was a great way to support. And my company's website is www.radicalignition.com.
What would you say about your guest experience on the show?
It was a great experience and very challenging questions. I really enjoyed being on the show today. So thank you very much for having me.
What would you say as a final word?
Just thank you so much. And I enjoyed it, and wishing you the very best.
Thank you, Melanie, and I hope our path cross. Thank you so much for your time and wisdom. I hope our path cross again with another amazing guest. Until then, okay, I forgot my line too. So, on the behalf of Entrepreneur Empowerment Club and its entire team, really appreciate you. And I hope our path cross again with another amazing guest. Until then, you have a wonderful time.
Likewise. Thank you.